you are a professor at Cal Poly, Cal Poly Humboldt, HSU for those of us who have been around for a little bit. And you do research with cannabis and exercise, which is fantastic, I think. I was very excited that you do that.
Me too.
But why? Because there's a stigma around cannabis, right?
For sure.
And especially the branding of, oh, we've got the stoner who's just hanging out on the couch, eating candy, not doing anything.
Right. Yeah, and so a lot of it came from my own personal experience. I've gone to a lot of graduate school at this point. Like I was basically a professional student for 8 years. I started out in physical therapy school, and in physical therapy school, you know, I'd have a handful of conversations with people about how we could maybe use cannabis with physical therapy, but it was like super not one of those things that we talked about in school at all. And so very much like stigmatized, like under the surface. I was like, hey, I think that would be cool to do this. And then I went to Indiana for graduate school. In Indiana, it's like super not okay, not okay to have any weed in your system, or like be caught with weed.
Way more stigmatized.
Yeah, especially when I was there. And so, but I still had those ideas of like, it's really something that I know that I do. Like I even when I was in Indiana, it's not legal, but I was still using weed with climbing. I just really enjoyed pairing the two together and really enjoyed it. And so it's like, I know that there's something here. And at the same time, you know, I'm listening to Joe Rogan's podcast, and it's like they're talking about all these different types of exercise and people getting high before, you know, rolling in jiu-jitsu. And it's like, people are talking about this, and a lot of it is just such bro science of like, oh yeah, it's really good to, you know, open up your lungs. And it's like, there's no research on that. I know that there's no research on it. I've looked at the research. It doesn't exist. And so, yeah, when I was looking for jobs right outside of graduate school, I saw the job posting for Humboldt State University, and I was like, Humboldt. I know that name is typically associated with weed, like, at least for me. And so I was like, all right, that might be a place where I can actually do some of this weed research that I wanted to do. So I found there's an organization called the Humboldt Institute for Interdisciplinary Marijuana Research. It's a group of professors at Cal Poly Humboldt now who all do research related to cannabis. So we have professors in sociology and business, economics, like all across campus. And so it was, as soon as I started my job there, within the first month, I was like, all right, who do I need to contact? I contacted people from sociology and psychology and was like, all right, I want to do cannabis and exercise research. We can't have people get high and do research yet. Okay. That means I'm going to do a survey study. And so, yeah, I just kind of started my first month of completely changing my research agenda because it was something I finally wanted to do and just did it.
So when you were going to school, this was in your graduate pursuit,
yeah,
that you started thinking, okay, cannabis would be interesting.
Yeah.
I'm using cannabis, especially with rock climbing
Totally.
and jiu-jitsu as well, right?
Yeah.
Those are the standard two where
yeah,
we're going to smoke a little weed and we're going to go do this.
right.
And so that kind of, it's funny that the branding for Humboldt reaches all the way out there.
Oh, totally.
Because everybody hears Humboldt and it's like, oh yeah, 420 weed, you guys
Right.
have the best weed. Emerald Triangle, right? And
I
you're
learned that in college. I learned that in Washington State in college. It was like, oh, this weed's from Humboldt. Like that meant something.
Carried
in
some
college.
weight to it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Were you at that point just using it for climbing, or were you using it for recovery purposes?
Just like life.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like
in college.
I'm
Come
just
on.
like I'm realizing now, looking at the research, that I'm kind of an outlier in terms of like use. It's like I'm a daily cannabis user, and like maybe even a couple times a day. And so, you know, talking about that stigma, it's like we typically think about people being lazy and like not motivated. It's like I've gotten 3 graduate degrees being a daily cannabis user, and so like I knew that wasn't true about cannabis users, and yeah, so I was really excited to be able to start investigating this other world.
And again, that's why I say you're the perfect person to talk about it.
Yeah.
Is because somebody says, oh yeah, stoners aren't worth anything. They just sit on their ass.
Right.
And you turn around and say, I've got 3 degrees. I've got 2 doctorates and a master's.
Uh-huh.
What are we talking about here? Do you want me to show you some research? 'Cause
Exactly.
that's what I'm doing.
Although I might be biased, though. I might be, you know, kind of biased towards finding the good things about cannabis and exercise and trying to stay away from more of the negative things. But I'm trying to keep an open mind.
But I think it's important, in that for the longest time, all you had was the negatives.
For sure.
Reefer madness.
Yeah.
If you smoke weed, you're going to start, living on the street trying to get crack.
Yep.
That's how it goes.
Totally.
It's a gateway drug.
Yep.
And that's all you got. And I'm sure, I've never been to Indiana, but I have been here, and even here there was the stigma of if you smoke weed, you're going to go down this path, and it's not going to be good for you.
Right.
You're not going to amount to anything.
Right.
Your life is going to be in the toilet. This is drug use.
Right. Yeah, and the way that I've kind of described it to people over time is like life is awesome. It's like it's like bad analogy, but like the Bellagio in Las Vegas.
In Las Vegas, yeah.
Yeah, like the fountains outside, and it's just like, oh, like those are so beautiful in and of themselves. And then it's like synced to music, and it's like, well, that's even more amazing. And so it's like, yeah, life is awesome already as is, and then we just makes it like a little bit more awesome.